This week we're painting a messy watercolor flower doodle, complete with a textured wash, blooms, and paint splatter, all directly in Procreate. Hey everyone, my name is Tila, and if we haven't met before, I am the voice behind your screen. I've listed the specs to this project on screen with me, and you can pick up the free color swatches right in the video description. Let's get into it. I've got my canvas all ready to go, and I've got my sophisticated summer color palette loaded in. I gave this away for free last week with 2 other color palettes. We're only going to be using a few colors out of this, but you can change it up however you would like. To create the base of our flower doodle, I'm going to be using a stamp from my Bouquet Maker's brush set, but if you'd rather trace a stock photo of a flower, you can totally do that as well. It'll work the exact same way. I just find that the Bouquet Maker saves me a ton of time when it comes to creating these flower doodles. So the one that I'm going to be using is the supporting number 14. I have black selected. I just like using black as my base for this. Just stamp it in with your finger and then rescale as needed. This is not part of the final artwork. It's just giving us our scale, our proportions, and our shapes. Next, we're going to start painting in our watercolors since this is a messy watercolor flower doodle. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my pinkish red color and then hop into my messy watercolor brush set. I'll leave a link on screen and in the video description to this. This is a massive brush set filled with drawing brushes and your messy extras category. There's wash textures, which we'll be using. There's bloom textures, which we'll be using. And then we've got splatters and splashes, there's soft stains, and then we've got your regular shapes and abstract shapes too. So there's a lot to choose from. It can cover basically any scenario that you find yourself in that you may want to recreate watercolor digitally. So for the painting brush, I'm going to be using my Tuesday water brush. It's my favorite watercolor painting brush, and this behaves like wet on dry would behave traditionally. If you paint a stroke and then you lift up your stylus and then you paint down another stroke, you're going to see that density of color. So if that's not something that you would like to appear, just make sure when you are painting your different elements that you either keep your stylus on screen the whole time, or when you lift up your stylus, you have intentions about it because you can anticipate that extra density. I'm going to undo this, and for my petals, because of that, I'm going to paint all these in by keeping my stylus on screen until it's all filled in with color, because I'm planning to add some extra depth with some bloom stamps after this. You can follow the outline of your base shapes as closely as you would like, or get kind of loose. I don't really follow it exactly. I just kind of roughly paint these in. If we turn off our base, we can see what that looks like. Next, we're going to add in our stamens. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, change my color to the lightest color in the sophisticated summer color palette, and reduce my size down to like 10%. And I'm just going to follow my guide, the base here, and paint these in. I'm going to add just a little bit more depth to my stamen. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, and I'm going to grab my orange and then change the blend mode of this to multiply, just so it blends a little bit darker with what's beneath it. And I'm just going to do this bottom edge on here just to add a little bit of extra color to this. And it gives me a sense of depth too, where they're all kind of convening in the center. Now I'd like to just give them a little bit more variety and texture. So I'm going to add in some blooms, and they're going to be behind the stamens that we just painted. So I need to come into my layers and create a brand new layer right above the main petal layer. So create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to my pinkish red color and also change the blend mode of this layer to multiply, because I do want this to show up really well since they're highly textured elements. Come into your brushes, head into the messy blooms, and you can really choose any of these more circular ones up here. So I'm just going to choose some at random for each one. I'll start with bloom number 6 and just tap that in and just set it behind, and you can rescale as needed, rotate, whatever you need to do to make it feel right in here. So that feels good, and you can see how that really adds that sense of depth there now. Create a brand new layer. Always put these on new layers, that way you can adjust them after you stamp them in. I'll just grab number 5 since it's right here. And this one, let me change the blend mode so I can see it better, and then rescale it. Create a brand new layer, blend mode is multiply. Let's grab bloom number 8. Make that a little bit bigger. That feels good. If we turn off our base, we can see how that's coming out. And next we're going to add in all of our messiness. So I always like beginning with a wash. It just kind of ties the background in with the foreground elements and adds a lot more watercolor texture, which gives it a huge sense of realism, like it's traditional watercolor. You're not really sure if it's painted digitally once you start adding in your washes. So I'm going to come down to the base layer. We'll turn it on just so we can see where our edges are, create a brand new layer. I still have the red selected, and now I'm going to head into my messy washes. And I'm going to select wash 19. My favorites for this type of technique are wash 18 through 27. So really any of these will work really well, and you can get some really beautiful outcomes and a lot of variety too. So I'm going to grab wash 19, stamp it in with my finger. That's too small, so I'm going to increase the size up to like, see, 55-ish. Make sure it all fits in the canvas. I'm going to reflect it, so flip horizontally. I like this little piece right here, how it's denser in color, because I know I can blend this petal right into it. So that's the part where it's starting to tie the background in with the foreground. And I like that I can grab this edge right here as well. Next, we're going to begin that blending. So I'm going to turn off our base, head to your main petal layer. Let's take care of this one first. So grab your smudge brush, and in the messy extras, choose the Bloom and Bleed. This is my favorite watercolor smudge brush. And with this one, you can either stipple or you can push the color a little bit. I kind of do a combination of both. And I like pulling the color from the petal and pushing it right into this denser area. And it all kind of ties it together then. And I can softly push a little bit more off the edge. I can push into it too if I want to soften the edge. And depending on how much you'd like to soften it, just increase your brush size and you can grab a lot more color at a time then. So I like doing a combination, especially in these lighter areas, of maybe pushing into the edge or stippling, just breaking up that hard line a little bit. I don't do it everywhere, just here and there. So it gives you the sense that maybe when this color was laid down, the background was just a little bit wet right here, so they bled together. And then over here I have a really dense hard line and I want to soften that up. So I can just stipple and then readjust what my stippling did. If I don't like how it came out, that's the nice thing about this smudge brush. It's really flexible. It's really easy to go overboard with this step, so I'm always like kind of reminding myself, that's probably enough. Let's look at it before you do any more. And I also like smudging my stamens a little bit since I have this element, just for consistency's sake. I don't do all of them, but these lines, these edges are pretty hard, so it'll just soften them up and, you know, just give that greater sense of continuity between all of the elements. So I'm going to come back up to the stamen. This is the lighter color, and I'm just going to smudge a few of these. It definitely pushes that messy feel a lot stronger that way. If you'd like to learn more about painting messy watercolors in Procreate in a variety of different subjects, from florals to animals to objects and food, then head on over to messywatercolors.com for a deep dive into my course on all things messy watercolor. I'll leave a link on screen and in the video description. I think that does it. That feels pretty good. Definitely don't want to go overboard with those, but that feels a lot better to me. And what messy watercolor painting would be complete without some paint splatter? We have to have the paint splatter. So come up to the top, create a brand new layer. I'm still using this reddish pink color, and head into your brushes to the messy splatters. And I'm going to use splatter number 4. And once again, just tap it in with your finger. I think I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. That looks good. I always try to go a little bit bigger than I probably need it, because I can always size down, but if you stretch your pixels too much, it's just not going to look right, even with the softer edges. We don't want any pixelation here. So that feels really nice. I'm covering most of my elements and it's not overpowering at all. I am going to change the blend mode to multiply, and you'll see it's going to stand out a lot more now. And what I like to do is on these areas where I have a lot of blending or smudging that takes place, I soften these ones up too. So it's as if the paint beneath it was still wet when the paint splatter hit the paper. So they're going to expand out a little bit. You're going to see those bleeding edges. So I'm going to grab my smudge brush again. I'm going to reduce the size a little bit, and I'll just stipple smudge these. So I have these more saturated, denser areas of color. And I do like leaving some of them with hard edges, as if the paper had dried there when those hit the paper. You can even erase some of the ones you don't like. Like if I don't want that one on my stamen, I'll just erase it out. Nothing says you got to keep all the splatters that are part of this brush. You can definitely reduce the amount down a bit, because I want the focus to be on the flowers. I don't want your attention to immediately just go to the splatters. It feels good. I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit on this so it doesn't overpower. So I'll come down to like 85%. So you could definitely call this done at this point, but I did want to show you how I outline my doodles. If you ever need them to stand out a little bit more or just give them a touch more personality, outlines are the way to go. So I like using the pencil brush for this, and that is located in the Messy Extras, the sketching pencil. And I actually use black for this, but I could use a darker red if I wanted. That could work well too. But if you really want this to stand out, then you're going to want to use a darker color. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, switch to black by double tapping where the black is. And I have that sketching pencil brush, and let's see the size. I think that's a pretty good size. I am at 7%. I am going to turn on my base just to use it as a guide and drag the base right beneath my new sketch layer and reduce the opacity. So way down. I'm coming down to like 20%. Make sure you're on the brand new layer that doesn't have anything on it. And when I'm drawing in the outline, I like holding my Apple Pencil pretty far up, and it's really loose, so I don't have a ton of control. I'm not like right down here trying to be super precise, and I just feel like it gives it a lot more charm when I hold it higher and looser. And I kind of just let the Apple Pencil glide along and do whatever it wants to do, so it gives me that sketchy, organic line. And I'll go over all the elements twice, and I'm doing it in that continuous line drawing exercise that you've probably done before to try different styles of drawing. I really like that exercise. The idea is you just keep making one continuous line. So you go from one element to the other without lifting up your stylus. So I'm going to do that for each one of these and just go over them a couple of times. It feels good. We can preview what that looks like by turning off our base and see if we like that so far, and then continue on. So turn the base back on and then head to the next flower. All right, last one. We can turn off our base, and now we are all set. So once again, totally optional to add that outline in, but when you need it to stand out, that's a great extra element to pop in there. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.